Hi, everyone. Hello, welcome. How's it going, everyone? It's so great to see you all. Oh, let me hold on. Let me get rid of this. Hello. Who do I see in chat? Doomwave. I see Brother Bill. I see Justin. I see Shinken. Yes, stream part 2. Hello, Square. Hello, nice to meet y'all. Frank and Rock, I see you out there. Hello. Congrats to Dr. Poxy for first, Up for Red for second, and Shinken for third. Dr. Poxy, long time no see. Ash said Trek, let's freaking go. I am so excited today to bring you all an amazing show. You all already know how much I love Star Trek. Y'all already know, how much we talk about Star Trek. We play Star Trek games. So when I had the opportunity to speak to these incredible and talented human beings here on Twitch about Star Trek, I had to take the time to do this today. So it is so great to see you all. Let me introduce our guests today. T Sailor and T Sailor, oh my god. The T Monster and
we are a package deal sometimes. So
oh my brain. Like, what is wrong with me today? This is how you know I didn't get any
Brain,
sleep.
what is brain?
We
That's
have
a
the
deep
T.
pull.
Quick,
We
she's
have
playing
the
that,
team.
that mind control game.
Yeah.
Oh god. We have the
Oh
T
my God.
Monster. And we
Yo.
have Blind Gamer Steve, aka Steve Sailor. Hello. How are y'all?
You don't know Shakespeare until you read it in the original Klingon. I'm just saying.
Fuck! Get back! It!
Oh my god. How are y'all doing today? Happy Star Trek Day!
Happy Star Trek
Star
Day.
Trek Day.
Happy Star Trek
Woo.
Day. September 8th. It was the first, the dropping of the very first episode where no man has gone before. And man, I mean, it set us on this path of absolute nerddom, and I mean, this is like a dream cast for me. Sitting down with the two of you and just nerding out for Trek until we wear out ourselves or chat. I'm good with it. I am good with it.
I'm telling you right now, I am so beyond excited for this because I mean, I talk to my chat all the time about Star Trek, but I don't get to talk to anybody else like on camera about Star Trek and have a, very in-depth and exciting conversation. So this is a real treat for me as well. Thank you for taking the time to come and hang out with me and my community today. I really appreciate it. I really appreciate it. So, can you please both tell everybody who you are, what you do here on Twitch, and if you would be a red shirt, a blue shirt, or a yellow shirt? Go ahead. T, go first.
Go, Steve. Oh, you want me to go first?
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, Steve, go first. Steve, go first.
Yeah,
oh,
Steve.
okay. All right. Oh, okay. We'll do that. Yeah. Hi, I'm Steve Sailor, aka Blind Gamer Steve. I am a content creator, Twitch ambassador, and accessibility advocate and consultant in video games. I basically help work with studios to try to be able to make their games more accessible to disabled players. I've worked on a few games you may have heard about. I don't know. I always feel comfortable talking about the specific ones every time, but it's like I did work on The Last of Us Part 2, and I'm currently working on Call of Duty right now, and I've done some stuff for Ubisoft, EA, Xbox, all that good stuff. And I'm just I echo Ash what you were saying about like I love Star Trek so much that I'm like I don't get a chance to talk about it much with people. I feel like every time I talk about it on Twitter, I just kind of like I'm just tweeting out into the void, into the all the way into the Alpha Quadrant, and just like no one really cares. But it just but I'm so glad that we can be able to actually do this. The first like Star Trek thing I ever get to just like talk about and nerd about on it. So thank you for having me on. And I would say the answer to the question, so red shirt, gold shirt, or blue shirt, I would have to not go with the traditional red shirt from the TOS because those die immediately. I would go into we'll go in TNG, and I will go red shirt because I feel like I would be a red shirt. Actually, it depends because I also think gold for engineering too, but I think red shirt for command is where I would love to be. Yeah.
That is a great answer. Okay. And you know what, Steve, thank you so much for all the work you do in terms of accessibility. I will say, even for me, I'm learning from you every day. And just to call
Aw.
out one small thing that I saw, like even on Twitter, I love the conversation between accessibility and availability. And I have since adjusted
Oh.
my way of, the way that I, call games, because you are right. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, availability and accessibility are two very different things, especially when we're talking about retro games, which is something that I focus on myself. So
Sure.
I'm learning from you, and thank you so
Aw.
much for all that you do, all your work. And okay, gold shirt. Okay, I got you. And come in. Okay, you hanging out with Worf? I see you.
Yeah.
All right.
Security and engineering. We all kind of stick together. It's pretty cool.
All right. Okay, I like that. Okay. All right, T, tell us what you do and which shirt.
Hi everybody. I'm the T Monster. You can call me T Monster, or Twitch Dad. I have been I started off as a Destiny 2 streamer. That was actually it was I didn't realize this until it was this week. I started streaming on a regular basis. And it was with Destiny 2, and that was my game du jour, and I still do Destiny 2. But since then I pivoted, along with a wild card game in Destiny 2. I do paranormal investigations on my stream. I do them live on stream. I also do evidence review on stream. I share with everyone how the sausage is made, and this all accumulates into a series called Old Spirits, and you find that on YouTube at Old Spirits Investigations. But both on YouTube and on Twitch under the T Monster, you'll see a lot of paranormal investigation techniques, tips, tricks, and footage on a whole live, and then in review. You find that on my stream as well.
Wow, that is amazing. You are so brave.
And the shirt. And
Yeah.
the shirt. Okay. This is actually a pretty easy one for me. I'm going TOS, going to the original series, and I'm going gold, baby. I'm going gold.
Okay.
I love
you're
it.
command too. Okay.
And,
okay.
I
and-
love it.
and
I love
yeah,
it.
Yeah, a lot of, and don't forget. I mean, there's a lot of honor in the red shirts, because remember, Worf started as a red shirt
Yes.
in TNG,
True.
and he evolved into his gold shirt. But yeah, I just, it's something about sitting in the big chair, baby. Something about that big chair.
I love
And
it.
if I had my catchphrase, on hitting it, I would just say, roll it. That's what, that would
like
be it.
you're
Roll
sitting
it.
in the chair, and engage
Yep.
warp engines, kind of
Yep.
engage or make
Roll
it
it.
so kind of thing. Okay, roll it. That's a
Okay,
good
Roll
one.
it.
okay.
That's a good
I
one too.
like that. I
like
like
that.
that. Okay,
you go.
okay. All right, I like that a lot. Yeah, okay. So, you know what, chat? If I had to be a shirt, y'all already know I would have to be a science officer. I would
I
want to
can see
be
that.
hanging out with Dr. Bashir, Jadzia
yeah.
Dax, you
Hell
know.
yeah.
I'm gonna be a blue shirt from Deep Space Nine, because that's where all the action is,
They
That's
get
where
to go
all
on the
the
landing
fun.
parties. Yeah. Yeah, they get to go on the landing parties.
Exactly. So, you know what? That's what I would choose. And I'm really excited to get into. So, T and Steve had written some really great topics, and I am so excited to get into them. This is going to be such a fun discussion for y'all, chat. I also have a channel point redemption. There's like a little ask thing. So, later on, if y'all have questions, there's a channel point that you can hit to have, like, it'll put it up in the queue, and then I'll have your question to ask later that you can ask to all of us. So, all right. So let's get into first our first childhood memory. What makes Star Trek special to you? How did you get into Star Trek, and why is Star Trek important to you? So let's go ahead and answer that. T, do you want to go first?
Yeah. I think it stands to reason. I'm putting age before beauty. I'm the oldest of the crew here, and really my first memory of Star Trek, it goes back to the original series. This was a little TV show that ran only 3 seasons, and a lot of people forget that. A lot of people forget that it only ran 3 seasons, and it was considered an absolute flop. And a lot of the actors thought, well, my career is done. And and I was one of those kids that found Star Trek in syndication. It would come on 11:30 on a Saturday night. It would come on at 11:30 on the Saturday night on WTVR Channel 6 in Richmond, Virginia, and it was the only thing that my dad would let me at the. We're talking. I wasn't even 5. I mean, it was like 5, 6 years old when I remember staying up with my dad to watch Star Trek, and I hung on every freaking word. My dad would be asleep. It was one of my favorite memories, and I miss my dad every day. And one of the memories that I have of my father was staying up late with him, because I was like one of the big kids. I was staying up late to watch Star Trek with my dad. And growing up, I had the figures. I had the Star Trek bridge. You could slide in and out different things on the view screen. I mean, I was living the dream, baby. I was living the dream. And I loved it. It was my introduction to science fiction. And I realized even at that young age, watching it in syndication, and even if it was like an episode I didn't particularly like, I'd still watch it because I'm like, yeah, but it's Star Trek.
Yeah.
So that is my earliest memory of Star Trek.
Oh man, I love that. There's so many like things that you shared that I was like, oh my God, that's me too. I felt that way. Like I did the same thing. But I really want to hear what Steve has to say. So Steve, tell us a little bit your story.
Yeah, so for me, I kind of, I guess, was the next generation, pun intended, of Star Trek fan, because I was born in the 80s, and I was at that perfect age when Star Trek: The Next Generation aired for the first time. I was 5 years old when it originally aired. And I had been basically, it was the thing that made me realize like how much I loved sci-fi. I loved space from that show. I it, like later in life, I didn't realize it then when I was watching it, but later in life I realized that was the beginning moments of me becoming basically a nerd. And at the time, it obviously was something that was not exactly the best sort of moniker to have. However, later in life, I realized no, I definitely wear that badge with honor. And it was one of those shows that I absolutely loved, watching from week to week whenever there would be a new episode on. And I'll even go to the step further. I have show and tell for the chat audience. This is show how to kind of prove how early life and how much of a nerd I was for Star Trek. I have this. This is my original tricorder that I've had for 30 years.
Yes.
And it doesn't work anymore because the batteries leak whenever you put any new batteries in. But I have had this for 30 years, and it was a gift from my parents. And it used to light up. You used to be able to hit the buttons and at least the little green buttons, and it would work. And it would change different sound effects. But this was basically the thing, and I've held on to this for 30 plus years. And I guess also another this wasn't in the topic list that we have, but I wanted to sort of talk about at least kind of my favorite character, because this also this character shaped not only who I am but also who I essentially became. And this is another show and tell, and that's this guy.
Love that.
Forge.
Heck yeah.
This was I did not have this in the 90s, but this did come from the 90s. My brother bought it for me for Christmas off of eBay, or I don't know where we got it, but and it was minted box. But Geordi LaForge was my favorite character growing up, not only because it's LeVar Burton, and I recognize of course I recognize him from reading Rainbow, and I love the fact that he was on 2 of my favorite shows as a kid, and it basically highlighted everything I love about sci-fi and reading as a kid. That was what shaped me. But also he was blind. And he granted he was sightless, and he had a visor that could help him be able to see, but also allowed him to be able to see different aspects or different spectrums of light that normal human eyes couldn't be able to see. and that made him specifically very much like qualified to be able to be the chief engineer of the flagship of Starfleet. Like
Yep.
the top guy for to help run the ship is a blind guy. And
Yep.
to me, that like as a kid, I do remember thinking this. I'm like, well, if he can do that, I can do anything. And ever since then, I would try to find I would use sort of, I guess, the engineering brain to try to solve problems. I use that in my day-to-day life of trying to be able to figure out, okay, my vision, my disability doesn't allow me to do this. Let me figure out a way to adapt my vision and solve the problem that I currently have.
Right.
And that is how I've been able to do what I've been able to do in life, and then also work with what I do, and basically make sure, like, basically kind of talk about it in an engineering way, how to be able to make a game more accessible for disabled players.
Yeah.
I still have yet to be able to meet LeVar Burton in real life. I would love
Yeah.
to be able to meet him still, but that to me is that is such a precious memory for me.
Yeah.
And I have been I've been a Star Trek fan ever since. It's my first love. It's the nerdiest thing that I geek out about, and that's just me.
But you know,
That-
I gotta add this real quick. My favorite Geordi moment
Mhm.
was in the episode Cupid, where Geordi is trying desperately to play the mandolin, and Worf just walks up to him, gently takes it out of his hand, destroys it against a rock, and then hands it back to him and goes, "Sorry." I mean,
True, yeah.
the fact that LeVar Burton, that just says everything about LeVar Burton as an actor, because he kept a straight face throughout the entire moment. And I'm just like, man, that's comedy gold right there, baby. Comedy
Yeah.
gold.
Oh my gosh. There's so many good moments in TNG just like
Oh, it
that.
was
And-
a tree. It was
Oh.
a tree.
It was a
that's
tree,
right.
yeah.
Yeah. Oh my
Uh.
gosh. Okay, so I love everything that y'all both shared, especially that story, Steve, because I feel like Star Trek really does that, right? Like Star Trek is out there changing, the way that we think about what's supposed to be, right? Like
Right,
it
right.
it inspires people and shows them it's not about what's supposed to be, it's what could be, right? Because even for TOS, there was those moments with Uhura,
So
being
many.
a black
Mhm.
woman
So many.
on the show, and they even said like Dr. King was inspired by
yeah.
Uhura and all that kind of stuff, and all of these kinds of things that they try to be about inclusivity and things like that. So I love that. And
Well,
T-
that was one of the funniest things about Star Trek on a whole.
yeah,
A lot of and we're not turning this into a political, I promise, not into a political a political stream, but there were so many uptight conservative pundits that railed against Discovery when it's Stacey
Abrams.
Stacey Abrams showed up as the president of Earth, and
Right.
everybody lost their minds. And the conservative pundit said, "When did Star Trek become so woke?" And all the fans went, 1966.
Yeah.
Yeah.
From the day it came out, like
I mean, dude, look at the freaking bridge crew. Thank
Yeah,
you. Done.
yeah. I feel
mean-
you on that. You're absolutely right. And I love T, that memory you brought up about how you and your dad watched Star Trek, right? Those
Oh,
were the
yeah.
things that I wanted to say like we had in common, because like for me, that's exactly how I got into Star Trek. Like I have a little ship on my
Aw.
this ship on my desk belonged to my dad. He had it
Oh,
on
wow.
his desk. And I always keep this on my desk, as a little part of something that my dad had. But I also watched it in syndication when I was a kid. Like I remember watching, I think it was like Seinfeld, then Frasier, then TNG came on.
Yeah. The Thursday
That was
night
the
lineup. That was
lineup.
a good one. Yeah.
That was the
There you
lineup.
go. There you go.
And that's how I got into it. And then me and my dad would watch, like our favorite episode of TNG to watch together is the one where it's Geordi and Ro Laren, and they're like almost like they're in between worlds, like they're not dead,
Yes,
but they're
phased out of
Yeah,
transport.
they're
Yeah, I
out of
remember that.
No
phase.
one could see them.
Yes.
Phase.
And then
That's a
there's
good
a
one.
part where Geordi tackles somebody and they tackle him out of the ship, like towards the end. Like he tackles him through a wall. And we would rewind and watch that part 1,000 times because it was so funny to us. Like we would just do our like little own voiceover lines and stuff. And yeah, like that was definitely something that we had in common. And that tricorder that you have, Steve, my dad had that exact one. That exact one. It is also no longer working. But I was like, yes, I know. As soon as you pulled it up, I was like, I know that tricorder. So it's just like you all. Like I watched it in syndication. I watched it with my dad. I got into TNG first, and then even recently, I started watching. I watched all of TNG, Deep Space Nine, and Voyager, and now I'm watching TOS for the first time, and I watched some Lower
wow.
Decks.
Nice.
So that's
Yeah,
how I got
yeah.
into it. That's how I got into it. And
The-
speaking of
the-
Lower Decks, you know,
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Steve actually got me watching Lower Decks, and I fell in love with Lower Decks.
yeah,
And my wife and I just mainlined the previous
Cerritos.
seasons of Lower Decks, just so we could be ready for the crossover episode that happened this past season between Strange New Worlds and Lower Decks. I said, how are they going to pull this off? And at the end, I was like, that was mastery. That
Yeah.
was absolute mastery. Now I do have I since you're watching TOS for the first time, I have a challenge for you because I did this with my wife and Steve. I think I mentioned that you need to do this too. So what you should do is you should go back and before you watch it, you need to watch season 1, the season 1 series finale of Star Trek Strange New Worlds.
okay,
And then after you watch it, you then need to look up a Star Trek the original series episode called Balance of Terror.
Yeah.
Because the final episode of Strange New Worlds season 1 is literally a shot for shot reproduction, complete with lighting of Balance of Terror. And I was like, I mean, Pip was looking at me, my wife Pip was looking at me like, T, why are you nerding out so hard? And I said, this is Balance of Terror. And I mean, I was absolutely crawling across the walls because I was all over it. I was all over it. And the thing about TOS, the thing about the original series is a lot of people say it's unwatchable, but I'm like, no, it's a show of its time. And and science fiction, see, you Utes, both of you Utes, you guys have no idea how good you have it as far as nerd television goes. I mean, you know, they put the original episodes of Battlestar Galactica and we ate it up like you know, fresh out of the box cookies. But the thing is with Star Trek TOS, when the episodes were good, they are untouchable. They are fantastic.
yeah.
When they are bad,
No, they're spectacularly bad.
you just strap yourself in and go, okay, it's going to be a bumpy ride, everyone. You know,
I
shields
used
up.
to do this thing in
Shields
my
up.
I used to do this thing in my YouTube videos when I would do Let's Plays. I would do like I would do these basically these little moments of like out of context theater. And I
Yeah.
would take spectacularally bad moments from Star Trek and have that as like the title card of whenever I would go into that segment, that's
Yeah.
the transition. Like it's so like there's so many times where like
Oh.
like Kirk slapping himself across the face.
Yeah.
It's so dramatic.
Or
Fashion.
or Yeoman Janice Rand going, you know, Captain, I wanted you to look at my legs every time I cross the bridge. Now look at them. Look at them. And
Oh my God.
Or when like Spock tap dances around Kirk like on the floor, and he's about to put his foot on squished William Shatner.
oh my God, that is wow.
There's
I
so
mean,
many bad ones.
it's so many, but you got it. But it's a bit like approaching TNG the first season.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And-
that one is bad.
Yeah.
But now even in the first season of TNG, oh, there are some absolute gems in that.
Sure.
But if you were to say, well, was there, you know, well, T, is there any Star Trek show that had a flawless first season? And I would say yes, it was Star Trek Strange New Worlds. I was waiting for that one suck episode, and it did not happen. I was so thoroughly pleased with Strange New Worlds. It just
Yeah.
knocked it out of the freaking park.
Mhm.
And
Wow.
but man, but when it comes to but going back to TOS, I mean, you can you had those moments of brilliance. I mean, I remember when they were making Star Trek 2, they said, okay, we're going to base this one off of a TV episode, and they scoured the entire thing. And when they got to Space Seed, they were like, we could turn this into a film.
Yeah.
And then we got the Wrath of Khan, which, I mean, yeah, those weren't fakes.
Yeah.
Those were Ricardo Montalban's pecs. He
Yeah.
was stacked, jacked, and packed, bro. He was stacked, jacked, and packed. And he was in his 50s. So I got hope, baby. Bring it. Let's go. Let's go, baby. Let's go.
Oh man. Oh man. I love that. I love that. It's so good. You know what? And I forgot about but so I had recently watched the movies too. Like when I first started watching TNG, I started off watching all the movies first. And I remember I did specifically watch that episode Space Seed before I watched Wrath of Khan, so I could, understand it a bit.
Good call.
Yeah.
Good call.
But I also saw the first Star Trek movie in the theater because they had brought that back for the anniversary a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
They did. Yeah, the original motion picture, and
it's
doesn't exactly hold up well.
It's a good. Well, here's the thing. I remember
It had its moments.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But I remember when the movie came out. I remember walking out of it going, huh. Okay. Yeah, that's how old I am. I saw it in the theater's first run. And I remember walking out, and I remember my dad said, so what'd you think, son? And I just went, huh. And honestly, I think what it was that they were trying to take Star Trek and make it 2001: A Space Odyssey.
Oh.
They were trying to make it. They were trying to make it cerebral. I'm like, that's not Star Trek.
Okay.
Star Trek is tribbles.
Yeah.
Star Trek is phasers. Star Trek is, Star Trek is. Oh my God, Star Trek is a piece of the action. Have you gotten to that one yet? Have you gotten to a piece of the action?
Which one is that?
That's the one where Kirk, Spock, McCoy beamed down to a planet that was irreparably damaged by an old starship that left behind the history of the Chicago mobs. And oh my God, it's great. It's great. Basically the planet becomes a giant mobster planet. And Kirk and Spock, man, they are having. Shatner and Nimoy were eating up the scenery. They were having the time of their lives in that episode. When you watch it, you'll just ping me. Just ping me and let me know.
I will. I will. Actually,
but I mean,
you know what? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say that, but the thing was that they were like, oh, Star Trek is the first movie is a good science fiction film, but it's not a good Star Trek film.
Okay.
And Star Trek 2: The Wrath of Khan is a great Star Trek movie.
Film. Okay.
It's space opera, it's that sweeping, grand, just awesomeness, of space, the final frontier. And I think that's why Star Trek, the second one, worked so well.
Yeah.
And they also had a brilliant writer and a brilliant director on it, Nicholas Meyer. I cannot say a bad word about that man. Anyway.
Which is the movie where they had like all the beauty shots of the refitted Enterprise? Was that the first one or the second?
That's the original motion picture. Yeah,
okay.
That's like 45 minutes of just the Enterprise, just flying out of space dock and just going out in the warp. It's like, okay, it's like after the first few minutes, like, okay, sure, cool, it looks great, but then it's like 5-10 minutes go by. It's, okay, kind of wrap it up here.
Yeah.
They actually recycled a lot of those shots.
For a lot of different movies.
Yeah, for 2 and other ones as well. But it was.
Okay, I have a question for y'all. Yeah. Okay, at the end of the movie, right, when they find like V'Ger and like they figure out like what's going on, and then the two meet and all that stuff, right? There's a fan theory that those two people is like how the Borg started. Do you think that
theory?
Yeah. Do you think that theory has weight?
No. It definitely has like elements of like I could definitely see it being the like the beginnings of the Borg, I just don't know where the where the transition to using cybernetics kind of like happens for them. It's
Right.
like, because obviously they can't the Borg is not from birth. You have like not only like human biological and tech, like cyborg, but kind of built into it.
Yeah.
So that gets added in. So I mean, there is I have heard that theory. I'm like, yeah, I could see that. I could definitely see that as a potential theory, but I also do like it that it's kind of like a little bit of an unknown of like how the Borg actually started. They're just like out there in the Alpha Quadrant.
Yeah,
Like we don't talk about them.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm not buying it, but I
Yeah.
will. Since we're talking about the characters, there is a really cool connection though between the commander who gets usurped by Kirk. Commander Decker
Mhm.
is actually the son of Commodore Decker,
Uh-huh.
and this is an episode that you probably haven't seen yet. It's called the Doomsday Machine.
Okay.
This is how nerd I go, everybody. I just want to brace your chat. I'm going deep. I know them by freaking titles in the TOS, but you actually see a great nod. There's a bar that the characters of Lower Decks are hanging out in
Mhm.
at this Starfleet shindig, and they find Kirk and Spock's name carved into the bar, and when they do a pan out of the bar, you actually see this cone that is featured in the Doomsday Machine, and it's basically this giant cone that destroys ships. Well, Commodore Decker, played by venerable actor William Wyndham, he is Commander Deckard's dad. And there's a very, they don't really go into it, but that is canon, that Decker is the son of Commodore Decker that Kirk had past dealings with. It's a great episode too. It's a great episode. They do a nice little nod to Humphrey Bogart in the Kane Mutiny, and so this is how deep their nerddom goes, because on the sets they were trying to do all kinds of nods and things like that. So yeah, that's my favorite connection between the motion picture and the original series. But having those two be the mother and father of the Borg, I'm not buying it. No.
Yeah.
That one doesn't fly with me. Sorry.
Yeah, especially when you go and you see, well, first of all, they're like way deep in the Delta Quadrant. And
Yes.
second of
Yeah.
all, like, I feel like, okay, if they're way deep in the Delta Quadrant, like, they must have assimilated like lots of other species to begin with. So
Right.
I don't know. Like, I thought it was an interesting theory, but I don't know. Like, I really am interested in figuring out like more than the Borg, like what is shown on screen. I want to know. I wish there was a show that was just like, all right, this is the Borg and they're assimilating and this is all the havoc they're like wrecking on everything. Like, I think that would
Sure.
be like really interesting.
I mean, they
don't know.
kind of did that in Voyager. I mean, like there was
Yeah,
actually, like,
yeah.
I remember at the time, this is like in the forums back in the day when Voyager was on the air, there was a little bit of blowback of like, okay, there's too much Borg happening in Voyager. I mean, and we're not talking about like about specifically 7 or 9 either. It's just specifically like how much that they they do have episodes of just the Borg, and it kind of sort of in a way like kind of like didn't make him as scary as they once were when they were first introduced. Like when they were first like introduced in TNG with Q.
Oof.
Yeah.
It was like this mysterious. It was like the mysterious kind of what the heck? They
Exactly.
were
Yeah.
legitimately scary.
Yeah.
And same with like even another nerdy reference. Same with like Doctor Who and the Weeping Angels. Like they were
Yeah.
legitimately scary at the very beginning when they introduced it, and then they just kind of like kept adding them in, and it's just like, well, now they're not so scary. And so the Voyager kind of was teetering on that. I think they kind of gone back around a little bit, like, especially with Picard. They kind of added a little bit extra, scary stuff into it, especially season 3, which I kind of enjoyed.
Yeah.
But like I also think as well, like that idea of the two of them being the progenitors of the Borg. the timeline also doesn't fully
It doesn't.
match.
It doesn't.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
how does the
doesn't
Borg
gel.
like that's like an 80-year gap?
Yeah.
Or 80 years between like TNG and TOS, and also Guinan had to be in there as well. So how did
Yeah.
she like know about the Borg within like it just seems like a short period of time, like that
True.
80 years to grow a whole species, I guess, in a way.
True.
But I mean,
True.
that's where kind of like that theory falls apart. But you're right, like it's a cool theory. I'm like, man,
It's a neat
actually,
theory.
like you could
It's a
you
neat
could definitely
theory,
make that
but-
work.
No.
Yeah.
No.
And I like the point that you're talking about where like in Voyager, like the Borg kind of is like demystified a little bit because
Yep.
especially when they introduce species 8472 and it's like
yeah.
they're even worse, and then even in some aspects like stuff in the Dominion War, like with
Mhm.
some of the things we saw going on there, like all right, they make the Borg look like this is nothing, but
Right. And you
I
see,
feel
that was
you.
one of the things. That's one of the things I think of the Star Trek. Star Trek, it's both their greatest attribute and their worst enemy.
mhm.
They like in TOS, the big bads were the Klingons and of course the Romulans.
right,
And in a lot of the episodes you could see them pushing that button of like, okay, let's bring in the Romulans, okay, let's bring in the Klingons. Then you had the big bad be the Borg in Next Gen, and that was
Right.
great until it just felt like going back to the Doctor Who reference. If they ever wanted to scare people, they'd bring out the Daleks or they'd roll out the Cybermen, and I'm just like, guys, come on, let's find something. And I never felt like Discovery had that big bad. I never. I never. Yeah, DS9, of course, the Cardassians, and I have to remember it is the Cardassians, not the Kardashians.
Yeah.
two different monsters altogether. But
Right.
but then you have what I really admire about Strange New Worlds is
Mhm.
how they have made the Gorn
oh
Yes.
more or less a throwaway alien from one episode of Star Trek TOS.
Yeah.
They have made the Gorn effing terrifying.
Yes.
They were like,
Yes.
okay, let's take the ferocity of the Klingons, let's take the stealth of the Romulans, and let's throw in a little alien xenomorph in there, and
Yeah.
we're golden. I'm just like, yeah, that is what they have done with the Gorn is absolute genius.
Oh yeah.
And I think that every-
mean, the
yeah.
problem too is that it like with Star Trek, like kind of going into like trying to find like sort of villains that are definitely still scary for
Right.
for its heroes, is the fact that it's a 50+ year franchise.
right,
It is hard to come up with something new and innovative as a new sort of like not only just a scary big bad, but just also scare like it's something that we haven't seen before, and that's tricky with any franchise that's been
Yeah.
around for this long.
And the only one that's
because,
really
like,
been around for this long has been Doctor Who.
well,
Right.
like it's to start. Yeah, Doctor Who I think it predates it. I think a couple years,
Yeah.
of Star Trek. But it's exactly that. So and it's tricky to be able to find to kind of mine new ground. I mean,
Right.
Star Trek Discovery tried to be able to do that with a little bit of the old, with something new, and especially with them like traveling to like 1,000 years into the future to kind of see what Starfleet and the Federation had become, which was a neat, novel idea. I don't like. So it could be argued whether or not they accomplished that or not. But I think the beauty of and this is kind of going into like Strange New Worlds, being that kind of perfect blend of nostalgia with new is that they're not afraid to modernize when they needed to. They didn't have to necessarily like have the original bridge of the Enterprise. Like they can make it look modern and new with new technology that technically they would have had if they had if this show was made in the 60s. But I think that it also brought back the idea of space exploration and the ideals of what Gene Roddenberry had instilled in that show, and also and again basically created something like new out of something old, like the Gorn, because
yeah,
the Gorn, you're right, they are legitimately scary in this show, and we've only
yeah,
seen glimpses of them, and like the last season we kind of the season finale we got to see a lot more of them, and like in their full scary form, and I'm like, yeah, like that is what the Gorn would look like to today's audience.
To today's
And
audience, right.
I think
Right.
I think it definitely blends that nostalgia with today's audience, and it still is it like that's why it's like new Trek today is like was I think it's amazing. I know it's like we're jumping the topics and whatever, but
That's
I think new Trek is
okay.
amazing.
That's okay. I
Yeah.
kind of we knew that this was gonna happen. We're gonna start talking about one
Yeah,
thing and
yeah.
like, oh yeah. Oh, a list. Okay, yeah, you know.
List.
But
You're darling. You're absolutely darling. Yeah, a list. Let's do that.
I
Ah.
can't wait to get into Discovery and Strange New Worlds, man. I have
Mhm.
not gotten into any of that stuff. Actually, you know what? That made me think about what do y'all think about Prodigy effectively getting canceled in the second season? Like,
That's a heartbreaker.
That's
Yeah.
a heartbreaker, yeah.
And the fact that the Paramount Plus wants to just get rid of it, which, well, I mean, Steve and this could be a topic for another discussion. Steve and I come from the days of podcasting and like early podcasting. Like, you know, there was a time where people thought to listen to a podcast, you had to own an iPod. That's how far back Steve and I go with it.
mm-hmm.
And I think the downside of podcasting is that it came up with this concept of disposable media, where you didn't necessarily have to preserve it. You didn't necessarily have to save it. And I think Prodigy is not disposable in any way, shape, or form. It is an entry level kid show. That's, I mean, how rare is that in science fiction? You know what I mean?
Exactly. That's exactly how I feel about it.
Yeah, it was the perfect show to introduce even not only just kids to Star Trek, but also just new fans to Star Trek, because it explained things like what is Starfleet, what is the Prime Directive, what is the Federation, like all of that stuff wrapped in a like with a youngish cast, and they had ties to, you know, and nods and Easter eggs throughout the whole show for those who were fans of Star Trek, and including obviously like a fan favorite, which is Janeway, like that,
right?
Like, that is really cool. And we actually had I think we had honestly a dope Janeway in this entire show. She was fantastic throughout the entire thing.
Mm-hmm.
And to see that then like that kind of like just drop it all completely, like that just doesn't make sense to me. And I don't know if it was a cost saving measure or what, but I'm like, that's the thing I don't understand with streaming. It's like, it's not like I don't know whether it's just because it's financial, they don't want to pay the creators of it anymore, or they just are like, no, we need to clean house, and we'll just get rid of some shows. It's like, it's not like you're like, you know, cleaning out storage space in a closet,
right?
It's like, it's just server space, just add more memory, like if you're running out of space. But
come on, memory is cheap. Memory is cheap, you know.
Yeah, so I don't know what the full reason as to why they decided to get rid of it, but I thought it was a great way to introduce new Star Trek fans, but still like have fun for fans of Trek, even like 50-plus-year-old fans of Trek.
Yeah.
I 100% agree. That was my biggest gripe. Not only was the show interesting and the characters were well written, and we got some really cool cameos in there from characters that we love, but just the fact of how are you going to get more Star Trek fans if you don't have a show that they can relate to, right?
Exactly.
Like,
exactly.
We need that entry level show, because let's face it, right? I love Lower Decks, but that's not a show for kids.
It's not a show for kids.
It's not a show for kids,
It's not
right?
for kids, but it's also not a show for new Star Trek fans. Like, that is for the ones who will understand every reference that they make.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And the show is not as fun if you don't understand the references, and when you do, it's like, oh my god!
Oh, they go deep.
Yep.
They go deep. I mean, Ash. You're getting caught up in a lot of the lore of the original series, and you're just gonna. The more you get into the lore, you should go back and rewatch some of the Lower Decks, and you're gonna be like, oh my god, I get that. It's it's a bit like when Pip and I watch Lower Decks. It's a bit like when my daughter and I, when she was growing up, when I took her to go see Wreck-It Ralph.
Yeah.
Because she saw me. Me as a coin-op video games kid, laughing at references she didn't get. And afterwards, she's like, what did that mean? Well, that meant blah, 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 blah. What did that mean? Well, that meant blah, blah, blah. And what's Qbert? Oh, let me tell you about Qbert.
Right.
Qbert took a lot of my allowance back in the day. And it's really the same. It's the same thing when you're watching Lower Decks. It is a lovely, you know, I remember when it first came out, there were people that were the gatekeeper fans that were just trashing it, and I'm sitting there going, this is the loveliest, this is the deepest love letter to Star Trek that I've ever seen. It's delightful, and
Yeah.
it's just such a blast, such a
Yeah.
blast.
Yeah. And you know why I think it's really important too, because all right. Oh, also I just want to say the main Leah, thank you so much for subscribing at tier 1 for 3 months in advance.
Thank you,
Thank
Leah.
you. That is so nice of you. I really appreciate it. I want to say, okay, because we had this as a topic, right, for us to talk about, like 60s and 70s Star Trek versus 80s and 90s Star Trek and how that relates to people today. And I think for this exact reason, this is why this is so important, because as me, a person who never watched TOS, right, there are moments when I'm watching this show and I'm like, okay, this is, sometimes it's really hard to watch. Not even for the story, because, like, yeah, there's a lot of dated tropes, but
yeah.
for the pacing, for the way that the camera work, you know, like the action and, like, you know, that kind of thing. So I can't
roll.
yeah,
Roll.
I can't even imagine, like, somebody who's used to today's standards of watching shows, like not even like watching things in syndication, like they're watching streaming services, they're able to binge and stuff like that. Like what their experience is like trying to watch even something like TNG, you know what I'm saying? Like,
Sure.
and there's certain like cultural things that I feel like it's like gonna be like, well, to them it's like, well, that's obvious, or like, why are we even talking about this? But like, this was like groundbreaking to us, you know, when it happened. So to have a new show, you know, like Prodigy was really, really, really important to get people like riled up for Star Trek again, you know?
Sure.
So I
But
feel
here's
sad
the
about
thing. But here's the thing, though, about the original series that I will argue to my dying breath.
Yeah.
There are still topics that they cover, like you said, they come across very tropey, but man, do they still carry weight.
Oh yeah.
I think you know, like when the conservative pundits came out and were saying, when did Star Trek become so woke? I'm like, did you miss Let This Be Your Last Battlefield, which is one of the tropiest. Well, it's considered tropey, but man, keep in mind when you watch this episode, this was at the height. This is at the height of civil rights, and the characters were basically in a battle because the one of the species was black on the right side of his face versus the other side, which was black on the left side of their face.
Yep.
But if you say, well, yeah, but that's old Trek. I mean, does it really hold up today? There's one of my favorite episodes is called The Ultimate Computer. And it was basically you meet the guy who basically was the person that created the computers of Star Trek, right? You know, Daystrom. You meet him, and he creates the next level. And this is a ship. This is a computer that can run the ship, run the weapons, do everything. And at one point, Spock is confronted about his admiration for this new computer. These were the words of Spock, and this was them talking about artificial intelligence. And he says, "Computers make excellent servants, but I do not wish to serve under them." Now, think about that in today's standards right now. That is why SAG-AFTRA and the Writers Guild of America are striking to this day. One of the issues is AI, and Leonard Nimoy uttered those words back in 1966.
Dang.
I
Let
think
that sink in.
I think
Let
as
that
well,
sink in.
like also like Star Trek definitely does go full circle. In a lot of ways, and nothing is more full circle than what we just had, and this is going like to literally this year, going back to and going back to the 60s, like so for those who grew up with TOS and started watching the movies and seeing that original crew, you had everything that was celebrated about Star Trek in the movie Star Trek VI: The Undiscovered Country. It had everything of what Trek was known for. It was an amazing send-off to those characters, and it was the last time that full crew ever got together on screen. And for those Star Trek fans at that time that grew up with it, that was an emotional moment for them. That was something from their childhood that they grew up with, that are now basically like, we're sending them off into the great wide frontier, and this is like, that was the perfect way to be able to end off that like the original crew.
Yeah.
We jump to this year, Star Trek Picard season 3. I basically have described that as the undiscovered country for the TNG crew.
Yep.
Well, it was something I grew up with. I grew up with the TNG crew, and to see them come together, like the entire crew, for one last time, and it brought together everything that the TNG show had, with its characters and its stories. And there were many moments where I became emotional. Like, it was the perfect send off to that crew, that it just made it like I understand what people felt about the original series. And again, like I said, it all comes full circle. No matter what generation you are in when it comes to jumping into Star Trek, there is always something that is going to, like, there is going to be that is something there that you can gravitate towards. There's something you can learn from, that even from back in the 60s all the way up until now. And that's why I say, like, when people ask, like, okay, what is the Star Trek series to be able to jump into? It's whatever one you're interested in.
That's true.
Because if you're interested in one, it's okay. You don't need to know everything that happened in the original series. You don't need to know everything that happened in TNG. But if you wanted to try Deep Space Nine, go for it. If you wanted to jump into Star Trek Discovery as your first Star Trek, go for it. Like, there is always like, every series has it, like, is a jumping on point for somebody. And to be able to, and then once you're done that, then you have a wider universe.
You have so much to play
just
with.
amazing
So
sci-fi stories that is like with different types of characters, and then you get to enjoy what it is. That's why I like Star Trek over, like, say, Doctor Who. Doctor Who, you can kind of have that with each Doctor. There's a little bit of a reboot whenever a new Doctor kind of comes in, but and I could say like that. Yeah, you can sort of jump in at any given time, but there is stuff that is still very much a linear. Like, okay, it's better to be able to kind of start from here, so you can be able to understand what happened here. But with Star Trek, there is like that timeline that you could go in chronological order. But I always argue, it's like, you can just jump in at whatever series that interests you, and you can you will find some amazing sci-fi television or even sci-fi film, and still enjoy it as like on its own. And that's why I love Star Trek.
Yeah. You know what? I have two things to say about that. So first, the way people can get into Star Trek. I agree with a lot of what you're saying. And I think, you know, you even brought up Deep Space Nine, which I feel like we haven't gotten a chance to talk a lot about this, you know, whole hour we've been talking. But Deep Space Nine, like, I feel like, especially in today's standards, the way that people consume media is so much more easier to consume, because you can, like, binge it and, like, watch from episode to episode to episode, because they all connect so well. Because that's definitely how I got into it. And when it was over, I was like, no, please, I need to know
I know.
more.
Yeah.
And
I would say, like, whatever series you start with is the series that is that's your first Doctor, or what your first Star Trek show. But Deep Space Nine becomes, like, for those who watch it, like, after you've watched that original show that you like, Deep Space Nine is a Trekkie's favorite, like, show. Like, that is the show that I have. Everyone I talk to that has watched Deep Space Nine is like, oh my god, that's like one of my favorite. It is so well done.
And I'll tell you something else too. If you really want to have a barroom brawl, start over something in science fiction. Don't say which one's better, Star Wars or Star Trek. You do this. What was better, Deep Space Nine or Babylon 5? Man, I have picked more fights. I remember saying this to we lost Steve. Oh no. I remember starting a very tense discussion when I said,
I need another drink after that.
Wait for it. No, Steve, you haven't heard a thing yet. I remember picking a fight with a bunch of nerds when I said Deep Space Nine is simply Babylon 5 plus 4. And man, did the insults start to fly.
Wow.
I mean, it was yeah, it got heated. It got heated. I'm like, so this is what it's like to pour kerosene into a fire. Okay.
Oh my.
Yeah.
You know,
See,
but I mean,
I'd love to see that happen in a real life panel. Like somebody
don't.
talk
No,
about
you
this.
don't.
Oh,
No, you
yes,
don't.
yes.
'Cause it happened to me on a panel once. And people got to me and I just went, "Frell, you guys, I'm watching Farscape," and I mean that just brought the house down. And I was good. I was good.
But Brisby,
And,
I think you're right. Like basically, people would say like, if you want a first show like Star Trek show, TNG is a good one. Voyager, even TOS if you want to. But like if you want, like if you like, I would jump into DS9 after that. Like that can be one of those. Like yes, you can jump into it from the beginning, but it is a tougher sell. Let's just say.
Yeah.
But I mean, but that was the thing, is that BAB 5 and DS9 came out at the same time.
Yeah.
And I think part of I remember very vividly that people were you either loved it or you didn't as a Star Trek fan, because you didn't go anywhere. You were always on DS9. But I'm sitting there going, I remember, first off, how many times have we seen that wonderful meme used for support of trans rights when Jadzia
Jadzia Dax,
she's hugging one of the
Klingons.
one of the Klingons, and she goes, "It's Jadzia now," and he immediately corrects himself, says, "Jadzia, my old
I
friend."
love that. Too.
Yeah.
And
I love that.
I don't mind saying it. That was one of my favorite episodes as a kid that was brought up on TOS, because they didn't just bring back those 3 Klingon characters from TOS. They got the original actors.
Oh,
who
yeah.
played them. It was Michael Ansara, John Colicos for the original BSG fans. He was the original Gaius Baltar.
Oh.
And I'm blanking on the third actor's name, but they loved him so much, and he was the Klingon from The Trouble with Tribbles, who also played the Squire of Gothos in the original series, and he came back to play Commander Koloth.
Gotcha.
I was as a Star Trek, as a Trekkie, as a dyed-in-the-wool Trekkie, I was like, they brought back the original actors, and I was crying at the end of that episode.
Yeah.
I think it's Michael Ansara is the last one standing, and he's singing a Klingon hymn, and I was like, message for you, sir.
Man.
DS9 was some of Trek's finest moments.
My God.
Finest moments.
I agree. I could sit here and gush about Deep Space Nine like all freaking day. Like, okay, I love that episode, by the way, and I think that's a big reason why I love Jadzia Dax so much.
That was that episode that made me like her a lot. I was like, got it. Yeah, you're cool.
Yep.
William Campbell.
Yep. Respect.
Thank you.
Respect.
Briz. Thank you. William
Yes.
Campbell, baby. William Campbell.
I love it.
Now that's a fan theory that actually made it into the books. There was a theory
that
the Squire of Gothos that William Campbell played, they were like the original Q. They were like, and then
theory about it.
Wait, is that the Trelane character?
Trelane, yes.
I think that's true. I think that's true.
There is a book series. I think it's Q
squared. Q
Yes.
squared.
I remember reading
Q
that,
squared.
and I think it was they said it was kind of like their cousins or something like that, or like something along those lines. But yeah, it's like
and there's
I have to reread it again, but it's
And there's a scene in Q squared where Q goes to Picard, and he goes, "You have to do something about Trelane," and Picard was like, "What?" And he said, "He's driving me mad. He is just absolutely mature. He's irritable, and he just doesn't listen to me." And then I remember what the author wrote. Picard could do the only thing that felt right in the moment. He laughed into Q's face.
That is so good. Wait, okay, hold up. I have to tell y'all. So I did watch that episode, and the
Squire Gothos,
Yes, the immediate first thing I thought was, they've got to be Q's. They've got to be Q's because the way
Yeah.
he was behaving like a child, and then the
Mhm.
ones in, their voices come down and they're like scolding him or whatever. That is such a that
Such a
felt like
great
such
episode.
a Q moment.
Such a great episode.
But
Yeah.
here's the thing. Here's the thing that's funny. Apparently, the actor that plays Q, John Delancey, never saw that episode or never
That's
knew
funny.
about
Never
that
did?
character,
That's funny.
No.
right?
You never knew about? Wow, John Delancey never knew about that.
He
character.
didn't know about that
That's
character before
amazing.
he was he was
Wow.
Q. But the thing is like seeing that first, have seen TNG first, and then seeing that episode, I was like, that had to be the inspiration for the way that he behaved, in TNG, especially because it felt so similar. It felt so like whimsical, silly, and I was like, I was very surprised to find out that he did not base the character Q off of any of that. Like, I did not know that.
No,
So, yeah.
and also a fun little thing that I love about Q is like one of my favorite characters in the
It's
entire Star Trek franchise.
Yes.
And to the point where I don't know if you guys have seen this yet or heard this yet. There was a stage performance. This was performed on stage at I don't know if it was a convention or what, but it was a scripted one. Like they did 2 1-hour shows. And it was Spock versus Q, and it was Leonard Nimoy and John Delancey on stage
Oh my
getting
God.
into an intellectual debate against each other as the characters, and it is gold. It is.
That's
It's funny.
I
it's
need to
also
see
amazing.
this.
Oh,
I gotta
it's not.
find that.
There's no video. It's literally an audio.
Oh,
It
my
was.
God.
I remember buying this at like a used bookstore. It was a book on. It was like it was on cassette tape.
Oh
Like,
my
that's- that-
God.
That's amazing.
Look it up.
Amazing.
It's Spock. Like, probably on YouTube. Spock versus Q. There's 2 parts to it, and it is amazing. It is
great. That's
so
great.
amazing that, and
great.
like you get to see a whimsical side of Spock.
Yeah.
That you don't think you would ever have seen or heard before.
Yeah.
Great. It's great. Chat, go look it up. You'll love it.
Oh, that is so awesome. That is
So I
so.
gotta
Now I'm
ask.
very curious.
If you've seen Squire of Gothos, have you seen The Trouble with Tribbles?
Not yet. So the
Okay.
last episode that I watched was
Okay.
the one with the Gorn.
Oh,
one-
Arena.
Yeah, that's the last
I
episode
told
I
you,
watched.
chat. We're going deep with me. This is fun. This is my childhood. So The Trouble with Tribbles, William Campbell returns, and he returns as the character in that Jadzia episode, which I think was called A Matter of Honor, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
I might be mixing it up with a Sandra Brightman song, but he comes back as a Klingon commander, and he is just as swashbuckling and just as swaggering, but he's a Klingon.
Yeah.
and it's really fun. And again, The Trouble with Tribbles, that is one of the touchstones of Trek lore.
Yeah.
And all the references that you've been seeing about Tribbles moving forward in like TNG and elsewhere, they're all going to make sense when you see this episode. And
Okay.
as a kid, it was always one of my favorite episodes. It was always one of my favorites.
Yeah.
But yeah, that meant a lot to me. When I
Mhm.
see the actors who played these original, Mike. Oh God, Michael. I'm blanking on his name. Michael Leonard.
Mm-hmm.
He's Mark Leonard. Mark Leonard. Mark Leonard.
Eric.
He played Sarek for years.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Across he played him in the films, he played him in one episode, and then he kept popping up in Star Trek Next Gen everywhere.
Yeah.
There was this moment where Sarek had to do, you probably remember this episode, where Mark Leonard, where Sarek had to perform some sort of ambassador. I mean, so many things were riding on this, but he was going through like some sort of dementia that only
Yes.
Vulcans went through.
Yeah.
So he does a mind meld with Picard so he can do this one last thing as an ambassador. And Sir Patrick Stewart
Yep.
acted his
Oh my
ass
God. Yeah.
off.
Oh,
I
it
remember
was like some
watching-
of the best acting in Star
Holy
Trek.
Yes.
Him
Yes.
going through all the emotions of Sarek, and Oh, it was such a heartbreaking but like scene, but just like you can't look away. Like it is.
Yeah.
Couldn't.
It felt
like,
real. It felt real.
Oh, well, it
and
was, I
it's-
mean,
and that's something that Star Trek did occasionally, like, but they were never really like. It's not exactly like an actor show. Like when you have like
Yeah.
a Patrick Stewart, you think like obviously Shakespeare and
Yeah.
and on the West
Former
End, of
RSC.
London, like very much like he's very much an actor's actor,
Yeah.
kind of deal. And Star
I
Trek
actually
wasn't
saw
really
him on
that.
Broadway.
Oh man, I would love to have seen him on.
wow,
on
what
Broadway.
was it?
Oh.
What
I
was
hope
the
I can be
show?
able to see him on his book tour because he's got a book coming out.
Oh,
Autobiography called literally called "Make It So."
Make It So.
what-
Yeah.
Make it so.
Making it so. I think it's making it so. But and that was the thing that like Star Trek actors when they were on the show, they were kind of like typecasted. They were stereotyped
Yep.
as actors. Like, oh, you're not really an actor. You're basically on this cheesy sci-fi
Oh.
like a show. But it was like we was seeing Patrick Stewart take on that role, and then moments like that when you see him like when he's like fighting those emotions with Sarek, it's like no, that there can be amazing emotional moments in Trek, and I think it kind of elevated the material to a massive degree. That's why I think people love Deep Space Nine, because they also dealt with like very amazing like deep kind of
Yep.
moments, and like especially dealing with the aspect of war, and just
Yep.
like in a way that
Yeah.
like Trek kind of sort of did a little bit, but it was never really kind of like fully talked about or delved into deeply like they did with Deep Space Nine. Like that one episode with Nog when he's on
Yup.
the front lines as
Yup.
an ensign. Like my God, like that is like, and then they do it full circle where they bring it back to in this new season of Strange New Worlds. They did another
Yeah.
version
Oh.
of that kind of an episode, and it's just
Yeah.
there is amazing emotional moments, amazing actor moments that are in
Not just
Star Trek,
amazing, and not
oh,
just
so
amazing
good.
actor moments, but I mean, the production crew, the writers, all
Oh,
coming
sure.
together.
Yup.
Like so there was an episode. This one I don't know by the title, chat, but it was in the last season of Strange New Worlds. Steve, you'll know exactly know exactly which episode I'm talking about too. I could not until the new Star Trek dropped. All I heard for a week were two words: incoming transport. Incoming
that's the
transport.
episode I was talking about. That's
Yeah.
the episode I was just talking about.
And
Yeah.
for those of you in your chat that know the episode I'm talking about from Strange New Worlds, it was basically the Starfleet version of Radar running through the MASH camp screaming choppers, 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 but it was incoming.
Oh.
I'm getting chills just thinking about it, but that haunted
Wow.
me.
Yeah.
It was, I mean, and man, and that entire episode, I can't remember the actor's name, but the guy who plays Mbega
Yeah.
on sadly, his role was cut short in Dune Part 1, but I really wanted to see more of him in Dune because
Yeah.
man, he brought the intensity. That episode was all him.
Yeah.
But man, yeah. So
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
Tom knows what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
For
Yeah.
a week, all I could hear was just incoming transport echoing in my head over and over again, and I'm like, okay, that's cool. And
Yeah.
you know, I mean, and that's what I love about Trek.
Yeah.
Even in TOS,
Yeah.
considered their finest hour. When you watch City on the Edge of Forever, man, you talk about some acting. Shatner acted his ass off in that
Yeah.
one.
Yeah.
And speaking as a theater major, speaking as a former pro actor, man, when I saw Shatner in that episode, I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah.
It was just heartbreaking.
Okay,
Wow.
here's
Under the Cloak of War. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Your chat's on it, Ash.
Yeah,
Your
yeah.
chat's on it.
Listen, this is the best chat. I'm gonna tell y'all right now. We be going in with Star Trek all the time. I love this chat. They are the
Let's go,
best. I'm
baby.
telling you, they're so good. They're so good.
All right,
They're on
here's
it.
a question I got for you guys. I'll ask you this first. This might be tough.
Okay.
What is your favorite episode of Star Trek?
Across all.
Man.
It doesn't have to be like it's specifically like. across
Okay,
all
wait.
Treks,
I got
all
it.
of
I got
what
it.
Okay.
It is Measure of a Man. Measure of Man with Data.
That's a good one. That's a good one.
Because
That's a good one.
I love Data so much, and that one really like impacted me in terms of understanding the depth of what Star Trek is like, like the content that Star Trek is creating in terms of understanding our relationship with people and
Yeah.
like how how we see others and what other means. And the fact that like, not only does Data have to prove that, he is alive and all that kind of stuff, like what that other person who just that doctor that wanted to work on him just didn't see him as human, like really impacted me. And the way that Dr. Pulaski would be like, oh, his name is Data, and he's like, no, my name is Data.
Man.
That's not the same episode, but I'm
hated
just saying,
Pulaski.
like,
I hated
oh my
that
God.
bitch.
She wasn't bad. I mean, Crusher was better, but
Yeah.
Yeah. I did not like her, but it just made to me like the whole like, this is what Star Trek is about. It is about, sharing, other perspectives and giving you different ways to think and really questioning, well, what do you think about like these kinds of topics? Like that to me. But I also want to say before we move on, I just bought Dune, the book. I just bought it
It's
on
tough
my
read.
last trip.
Tough
so
Yeah.
I just since
Tough
you
read.
talked about Dune and the fact, Steve, when you were talking about the acting thing, so I saw Patrick Stewart and Ian McKellen in two plays in a rep.
Oh,
I
yes,
saw-
when they were- oh.
Yeah, when they did No Man's Land and
Yeah.
Ash.
Waiting for Godot.
Ash,
Front
you're just-
row,
you're
front
killing me.
row.
You're killing me, Ash.
Front row?
You're
Oh
killing
Yeah.
me.
God. Oh.
Killing
Yeah.
me, Ash. I
was
have
good.
to go now, chat. I'm not cool enough to stay here.
So I saw them,
Okay.
and then there was an older gentleman sitting next to me, right? And after the show was over, he turned to me. I didn't know, we didn't talk, not a lick the whole time. He turned to me and he was like, "You just saw the definition of theater acting right there in front of you."
Amen. Amen.
And I
Oh.
was like, yeah,
you
I
did.
felt
You
it.
did.
I felt it. It was so good. And I want to
man.
also say, in terms of acting with like Star Trek, because that was the one episode I was going to bring up too, Steve, was Nog and what he was going through and the
Yeah.
trauma of what, because you just see Nog, he's a little kid, he's causing
Yeah.
trouble, don't sit up on the ledge,
He was the
Odo's
comic
yelling at
relief
him.
in the show at the beginning.
Right.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then you're just like, who is this little kid? And then he's like, nah, I want to make my life into something. I want to do something with myself. Gets him to Starfleet first, Ferengi and Starfleet, and then goes through this trauma experience. And then, has to like, hides away with, what's his name? The singer. What's his name?
Fontaine. Like,
Yeah, Vic
something
Fontaine. He
Yeah,
goes into the
Fontaine.
world with
Fontaine,
Vic
yeah.
Fontaine, and then kind of like tries to like wash his sadness away by living in that whole space and
Yeah.
escapism.
Oh, yeah. The
How
trauma
much
it all,
of
yeah.
a real scenario is that for people?
Mhm.
And I just
Like,
thought he
yeah, I
portrayed
kind
that
of-
so well.
It reminds me of, and this kind of leads into my my personal favorite episode. This not this episode, but it was also the episode. For me, best episodes is the Best of Both Worlds, Part 1 and Part 2.
Yeah.
Like with Locutus aboard, but like also that next episode after that, because the Best of Both Worlds Part 2 was the season premiere of that season. The
Family.
following episode, that's the one where he goes back to
Family.
France and his family, and
Yep.
there was a moment where he's fighting with his brother, and he just and at the end he breaks down, and the trauma
Yep.
of being Locutus and what he had done as Locutus. Like,
Yep.
I can't remember specifically the exact line, but like along the lines of like they took everything. Like it was just like it hurt my soul.
And then the
to see
actor
like that.
playing his brother said, "So the great Jean-Luc Picard is human
After all, yeah,
Oh,
exactly. Yeah.
yeah.
It was such a great and that's that kind of like moment where like we never got like no, like people would watch that and be like, oh, it's just kind of, it's a one-off episode. It doesn't really like matter because he's going back home to his family. But people forget that was like he needed to deal with the trauma of all that, and the same with Nog, kind of going into the holodeck and spending all that time with Vic, and kind of and that was how he was dealing with trauma. And it's just that hits so hard, and I even lean into a little bit of again, another favorite episode of mine is Far Beyond the Stars from Deep Space Nine. When this is the one where it's the ultimate, when if Cisco had back in the 60s when he wrote the Adventures of Deep Space Nine as a book, and what that was like, as it just had the last, oh my god, that last monologue of Cisco and Avery Brooks, I'm real, damn it, I'm real. It just it's again those moments. It's just
you want to talk about amazing acting?
Oh, hell yeah.
Oh my god, yes.
Oh man,
Avery Brooks is
Avery Brooks,
a
baby.
absolute
Avery freaking Brooks,
genius level, amazing actor, and it just and I love that, and I know that a lot of people's sort of favorites also is Inner Light. That's kind of
oh my god, Inner Light messed me up for days.
I actually tried to find that, I wanted to get that specific flute so I can learn that tune, and when I heard, there is a moment in Star Trek Picard, I can't remember which season it was, but you do hear a little bit of that melody when you see the flute, in its kind of memorabilia or whatever.
Yeah.
And I was like, I heard, it's all that emotion kind of came up again. It just, but yeah, no, I would say my favorite's definitely Best of Both Worlds Part 1, Part 2. That cliffhanger, y'all.
Yeah.
Cliffhanger. Mr. Worf.
Yeah. Fire.
I was like,
man.
Oh my god. And that's how I remember actually I went to the theater to see, because they had reproduced that for Blu-ray. And they put those 2 episodes out, but they also put them in the theater back to back. And the thing I was kind of sad about was when they played those back to back, they basically edited out the to be continued, and that sort of dun, 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 that the music kind of that hits, and it I felt that was kind of added to the motion. They edited that out and basically it was Mr. War Fire, and then they kind of edited it back in again, and it's oh man, that was it kind of ruined a little bit of the moment, but it was still cool.
So for fans of the Inner Light, this is the music nerd in me coming out. In high school, I was in the all regional band that was directed by Jay Chataway. Jay Chataway was the guy who was one of the arrangers and one of the composers. He's the guy that wrote the Inner Light, the Inner Light melody. He turned it into an 8-minute orchestral suite.
Oh, that's awesome.
And if you look it up, it should be somewhere on Spotify or Apple iTunes. But it's called the Inner Light Suite, and it should be from the music of Star Trek. And at that time, I bought the CD just for that track.
Wow.
And it is an 8-minute suite based on that little melody. And every time I listen to it, I am weeping like a baby. If I need that cathartic release, that's what I listen to. It is gorgeous.
Yeah.
But when it comes to favorite episodes, Inner Light is one, and I think this is one of the advantages that Next Gen had. And I think they found those acting moments in the original series, sure, but Next Gen had actors that said, no, we can take this and go up a notch. And this is going to sound awful, but I'm going to throw it out there. I think it was Rob Bergman, the guy who basically took over for Gene Roddenberry when Gene Roddenberry passed.
Ron Bergman.
Ron Bergman basically said, he said this in a documentary. He said, "This is going to sound horrible when I say it, but just bear with me. Roddenberry passing away was the best thing to happen to TNG, because then they could take the gloves off and do things that Roddenberry said you can't do that."
Yeah, he had very stance of there has to be no inner conflict with the crew.
Yeah.
There's the drama
Berman,
has to be
Rick
outside
Berman,
of
thank you.
of like everything has to be outside of the crew. Everything has to be affecting them, not as them themselves, that kind of thing. And also there was like he had a very like strong stances of how like what Trek should be. Which
Yeah.
I mean, hey, it's Gene Roddenberry. Like it's his show. It's his property. Like he can do.
He was
in a
the
way
great
what
bird of the
pleases,
galaxy.
But I think
Yeah.
Rick Berman. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah,
It's
Rick Berman.
Rob, yeah.
But the problem
But,
was he was still producing Next Gen like it was TOS.
yes. Yeah.
So when he so then Rick Berman was like, okay, we're gonna start doing stuff like Inner Light. We're gonna start going in Frame of Mind. We're gonna do stuff that where we get those tensions, where we get these things that make these characters real. But if I were to pick and that's and moving forward, you started to see just how far they could really take the acting craft and apply it to TNG, to DS9, and otherwise. But I will tell you, I don't think I have seen anything that ripped me to the core like Chains of Command, where they got David Warner, who had previous experience from being Star Trek 6, being the head Klingon in Star Trek 6, who had worked with Nick. Again, here's how deep this goes. David Warner played the head Klingon for Nicholas Meyer in Star Trek 6. David Warner had also worked with Nicholas Meyer on Nicholas Meyer's first film called Time After Time, where he played Jack the Ripper, and he gave me nightmares for months as a kid. And here's David Warner as a Cardassian torturing Picard. I've lost count how many times when Pip has said to me, we're doing some DIY, and she said,
there are 4 lights.
yeah. How many lights? There are 4 lights. I mean,
Yeah.
and man, when
Wrecked me as a kid too.
Yeah.
When Stewart said that line, I remember that was my incoming transport back in the days of TNG.
Yeah.
I love that too, because it's like they're torturing the audience as much as they are Picard, because it's like we can see there's 4 lights, and we know that Picard is right by saying there's 4 lights, but it's just like you just get so pissed off about him saying no, there are 5. Like no, they're not. Like,
but then
I love that kind of a moment.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then at the very end, he said, for a moment, he actually told number 1, for a moment, I thought I saw 5 lights.
Ooh.
And
I remember
man,
that. Yep.
I mean,
I know. That episode messed me up kind of in the same way that the episode with Chief O'Brien being in
he told Troy. He told Troy.
Yeah. The one where he was in the mine prison and he felt like it was like 20, 30 years. Just like it messed me up in the same way,
like
just
he lived
like
out
that.
an entire sentence in minutes, or entire life
Yup.
sentence in minutes, or something like that. Like, oh my
Yup.
god, like that. It's the same thing with like Inner Light too, but it's like in the opposite spectrum. It's like
Yup.
you spend an entire lifetime in the span of minutes. But in O'Brien's case, it was like it was an entire prison sentence, and I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, that is just like, oh my god, like man, Star Trek is so dope.
Star
man.
Trek is so
It's
good.
dope as fuck.
Oh,
I love
man.
it.
All right, can we get that as T-shirts and wear them at TwitchCon this year?
For
Star
real.
Trek is dope AF. You know? and then we put our Twitch addresses on the backs of our shirts. How about that?
Oh man, I love it. I love it. And
We aren't just nerds. We're Trekkies. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Get it right.
Oh,
We're
man.
Trekkies.
right.
Not Trekkers, Trekkies, baby.
Wait, actually, you know what's fun? I'm gonna tell y'all a really silly story. So when I went to Dragon Con, I got to meet George Takei, right? Got his autograph. So nice. I told him I saw him in Allegiance on Broadway. He was so
Oh, right,
happy.
yeah.
Yes,
Oh, so cool.
he was great, right? So I had his autograph in my hand. Like I'm just standing there, like still in awe. I'm about to turn out and leave the room, and there was like somebody behind me, and she goes to like, I guess, her daughter or whoever she was with. She was like, oh, that's the guy from Star Wars, right? And I almost did one of these. What? I almost did it. But then I was like, no, Ash, behave yourself. And I just turned around and I was like, I'm walking, I'm getting out of here. But
I will
yeah.
say as well, like I have met, like there's only 3 people from Star Trek that I've officially met. I've met Will Wheaton at a convention. I got I have a photograph of him and I and like we kind of chat a little bit. It was really cool. I've also met Walter Koenig at Dragon Con. This is the first time I met T. This is back in 2008. Like he and I were both waiting for a cab. And he was just kind of like standing. He was short. Like I didn't realize how short he was.
Short guy. Yeah.
But he's definitely short. And I was like as soon as I saw him walk up, I'm like, oh my god, it's Chekhov. So I mean, like as soon as the first cab pulled up, I immediately went for the door, opened it up, and I was like, here you go, sir. And he walked in and it was like, thank you, I appreciate that. And I was like, yes. I was like, this is great. And then the one that I have an audio file of this that I will keep to the rest of my days. I have spoken to and had multiple conversations with William Shatner.
Oh, nice.
I have an audio bit where he goes, "Hi, I'm William Shatner, and I think Steve Saylor's wonderful." This is great.
One of the things I like to do at cons, I like to pull out. I know why a lot of these stars are at the cons. They're there to promote the current show that they're on or something like that. But I always like to pull out the left field stuff that they did because I would remember them from other things.
Yeah, right.
And so when I saw Robert Picardo and he was packing up, I walked up to him and I said, Mr. Picardo, and he goes, I'm sorry, I can't do any autographs or selfies. I've got a plane to catch. I said, just want to say real quick, I loved you in Inner Space. He dropped everything and went, oh my God, thank you. You know, because he was absolutely lovable in Inner Space. That movie has a special place in my heart. And if you know, you know. And if you've never seen Inner Space, just picture Fantastic Voyage, but then throw in Martin Short for laughs.
Yeah,
and that's pretty much it. But Robert Picardo steals that movie. He steals that movie, and he is absolutely brilliant in it. And I just he's a joy. He's a joy to watch in anything. I mean, they Star Trek. When you think about how much it has permeated our society.
Yeah.
And how, like for example, I mean, and not just how seriously it has impacted us as a society, but the impact it's had on space exploration, on the development of NASA. I mean, Ash, if you were ever in the DC area, please let me take you to the Smithsonian Air and Space because they have restored the original Enterprise, and every hour on the hour it lights up.
What?
And yeah, they spent several $1 million restoring this original model, and what's really cool about it is you see it, and it's the Enterprise. But when you walk to the other side, you see how they wired it up for the original show back in the 60s.
Yeah,
and this is all part of the Air and Space Museum.
That is awesome.
But when you when you hear the astronauts talk about, you know, well, what got you into this? You know, what and they said, I was watching Star Trek.
Yeah,
I was watching Star Trek, you know?
Yeah.
And
I mean, we wouldn't get Whoopi Goldberg in Star Trek if it wasn't for her loving like Nichelle Nichols in the original Star Trek. Like there's a great story I love that she said like it's like the best it's the best thing she said that she's ever done. And she's a diehard Trekkie. But what was interesting was that when she had heard that LeVar Burton was going to be in the show, he actually talked to LeVar. He's like, "You gotta get the producers to bring me on." And when he told the producers, they were like, "No way! Like she's a Hollywood actress. She's an Oscar winner. Like there's no way that she would want to be on a Star Trek show or on a TV show, let alone a Star Trek show." And and she had to go back and basically she never heard anything. And then when she talked to LeVar later, and she goes, "Why did they go?" It's like, they didn't believe you, and she goes, "You got me on," and so that's how we were able to get Guinan in TNG, and it's just so like, oh man, like we would not get Whoopi. Like Whoopi was like a big deal, and Star Trek, like that's huge.
Was great. I mean, and when you think about all the people who made cameos during the run of TNG and Voyager and DS9 and now currently and now currently on Strange New Worlds. It really is astounding, and they're all saying, "Yeah, I want to make this cameo because I'm a fan," you know,
Right,
and
right.
and you know, it's there's just something very special about that. There's something very very special about that.
Yep.
And I,
Yep.
you know, and the fact that, and oh, you know, there has been one show I feel like has been getting a little overlooked during this whole Nerd Fest.
I think I know
We
exactly
haven't
what you're
really,
talking about.
we haven't really talked about Enterprise.
Yeah,
I was gonna
and
say.
We haven't really
Yeah.
talked
Yeah.
about Enterprise. I mean, Scott Bakula still got it, baby.
Yeah.
I mean, Archer was a favorite of mine, and I look at Enterprise the same way I look at Peter Capaldi's run with Doctor Who.
Yeah.
It was a terrific cast, cast, great premise, but some of the writing was a little rough on the edges. It was like watching those early seasons of TNG,
Gotcha.
and I you know, a lot of people, you either loved Enterprise or you hated Enterprise, and I'm just like, you got to look at Enterprise as like sort of like their opening credits.
Okay.
It's that wide-eyed wonder of what is out in outer space, and I would argue across the board, it's got the best opening credits of any Star Trek show, because you're following the steps of space exploration all the way up to NX-01, and I'm just like, the NASA nerd in me loved that.
No, the Rod Stewart cover also was not one that like people really enjoyed at first. It got
At
better.
first.
I've got to
agree with
say,
it.
I was on that camp. I heard
Yeah.
the first time I watched the show, because I've only seen one episode, which is the first episode, and the
Mhm.
first time I heard the song come on, I was like, "What is this?"
Very
Why?"
different, very different, but it grows on you. It grows on you. It grows on you.
Yeah.
Yeah, it grows on you. It
But I
grows on
even
you.
felt that way for the Deep Space Nine theme song, because I was so used to TNG and that
Yeah.
like pomp and circumstance of like how the intro music plays, and then eventually I was like, okay, wait, I really like this Deep Space Nine one.
Yeah. I agree.
Oh man, yeah. But that's probably. Do you feel like Enterprise gets overlooked often? Like that's like a
Yes.
regular thing for
I
Enterprise?
think so.
Yeah.
It hit at a time when there was a bit of like in regards to like the current sort of landscape of pop culture and TV, it was kind of considered at the time like it's a bit of Star Trek fatigue.
Yeah.
Because we had just
Mm.
had basically TNG, Deep Space Nine, and Voyager dominating the 90s, and then you get the next show of Enterprise, and it was to I mean, yeah, I think like every season of those shows had 23 episodes. So you had
It was
7 seasons of 23 23 hour-long episodes of both of TNG, Deep Space Nine, and Voyager. That's a lot of 1 hour television for multiple years. So I think like it did what it could with the with the material that it had, and I think it definitely redeemed itself a little bit later on,
Mhm.
in the later seasons, but it definitely is not one that like people it's one people will go back to and realize, hey, this wasn't that bad, but it was
Yeah,
one
exactly.
where I could like there was people that were jumping off of
Yeah.
Star Trek being like, I can't watch it anymore, it's just not for me.
And then
I
was
think
there like a period in time when there was no Star Trek?
it was
Yeah.
just dry. There was no Star Trek. And
I mean, it was Enterprise, and then the next thing that of Star Trek that happened after that was the J.J. Abrams movie.
Oh.
It was
And-
it was that actually. No, I'm trying to think of like was the TNG movies. No, that might have been actually the TNG movies actually at that point.
well,
I
it was
have to
the
double
late it was sadly it was the later TNG movies, which while I
It was
loved
Nemesis.
its
I think
director-
Nemesis was the last
Nemesis.
one. Yeah.
Oh
yeah.
man,
I
Nemesis
wish I
was
could
a
unwatch that.
Oh
Mm-mm.
man, we all do. We all do. That was I remember.
I'm kind of like here's the thing. Here's a small like tiny little fact about Steve. My first date ever was going to see Star Trek Nemesis.
Oh,
and it was actually around my birthday too. So it was a double.
Oh.
The relationship never happened, but you know, it was I don't know if it was because of Nemesis. So you know,
No, I would-
also it
well-
was the thing that introduced us to Tom Hardy. Everyone forgets
there is that. There is that. There is that.
So just
Um,
saying.
But here would be my argument. As bad as Nemesis was, I would argue that Nemesis is better than Star Trek Into Darkness, because I enjoyed Star Trek, the J.J. Abrams. No. First off, J.J. Abrams going, oh, it's not Khan. It's not Khan. My name is Khan. You mother effer! And you also said they weren't in purgatory, but you lied about that too, didn't you? Didn't you, Abrams?
Okay.
I freaking
Angry old
hate
man
it.
yells at Cloud.
Old man yells at Warcore. I was so freaking
we all knew it was Khan. Like, you know what? It's one that's like, it's not completely unwatchable. It is still. I think.
No,
I went back
is,
and rewatched it.
No,
it is not as bad as
no,
we thought it was.
It's completely unwatchable.
No,
it is completely unwatchable.
No, you know what was completely unwatchable?
Oh, I know. The Matrix sequels. They were completely unwatchable.
All right, that's it. I'm out of here. We're not going into that slander right close to midnight.
I swear. I was so. As much as I was disappointed when I walked out of Nemesis, I was angry when I walked out of Into Darkness, because I'm sitting there going, you recycled. Not only did they recycle great moments from Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, but they then pulled out completely out of context all this crazy stuff in the timeline that I'm like, this doesn't work. And I was so angry with Into Darkness, I did not go see Star Trek Beyond. Okay. And I feel like I need to pull the Band-Aid off and watch that, because one,
Star Trek Beyond is good. It definitely had its good moments. Like it was written by Scotty. Like he played I'm blanking on his name.
Simon Pegg.
Simon Pegg, yeah. It was co-written by Simon Pegg, and he's a giant Star Trek fan. So it's definitely good in and of itself. But I would say, in defense of Into Darkness, I know again, I'm not saying it's great. I'm not saying it but I think it can hold up, because Peter Weller, RoboCop himself, plays an admiral in Into Darkness, and he's good. He's chewing up the scenery.
Is there any alcohol?
He's good, and you gotta admit, Benedict Cumberbatch, he was kind of given a sort of a crappy premise of it being him being Khan.
I'm not saying no.
He was good.
I'm not saying
in that movie.
I'm not saying that the actors didn't do their best. I'm just saying that the movie was everything I hate about J.J. Abrams, because he just kept saying, oh, it's not this, and it was. And I was so freaking angry at J.J. Abrams. And then he's like, well, I'm going to redeem myself. I'm going to make some Star Wars movies. I'm just like, oh God.
Oh man.
And here's where I felt like Enterprise, bringing it back to Enterprise. Here's where I felt like Enterprise struggled, where I think, and I don't know if it's an evolution in writing, but I've always found that prequels, and I'm doing this right now with some of my own stuff with my wife. When you write a prequel, it's hard, because you're trying to tell new stories, but you're telling new stories that we know things are coming at us. And it's like for example, I really hated, using another franchise, I really hated the trilogy, the episodes 1 through 3 trilogy. Okay. I hated them. I wanted to love them. I didn't even like them. I was just like, this is phoned in. But then you watch Obi-Wan, the series Obi-Wan Kenobi, and I was hanging on. I was like, this was what I wanted. Right. This was what I wanted in the prequel. Rogue One. Here's the thing.
Here's the thing, though. Yeah. And in small, like, I know we're like, this is Star Trek, but I'm going into a little bit of a tangent with Star Wars. The prequels were not made for you. They were not made for me. They were made for kids, because every person that grew up with they grew up with the prequel trilogy, they loved it, and they loved the relationship between Anakin and Obi-Wan. They absolutely loved it, and to see them now in getting the credit that they deserved as Hayden Christensen and Ewan McGregor, you could see the reverence for those characters in Obi-Wan, and also see it like even in the cartoons of Clone Wars and Rebels, and now we get Ahsoka out of it. Like they like that is what like we're enjoying the benefits of the prequels from that. And I think even going back into Star Trek, it has been they have also gone the prequel route.
And that's what I was.
In regards
And this
to
is what I was getting at.
Enterprise
Right.
and with Discovery and Strange New Worlds as well. So, and there are ways to be able to do it and do it well. I think it just we weren't ready for prequels at the time in the 90s when Star Wars came out, because
In the early
it
aughts,
wasn't
yeah.
designed for us, and it was like that's my thing.
And but the counterpoint I would have to that is I feel like writers have gotten better at writing prequels.
Sure.
And I think because writing prequels, I think was still kind of undiscovered country, pardon the pun, undiscovered country with Star Trek and Star Wars. But then you look at like Rogue One, you look at Andor, oh my God, Andor, and then and with Star Trek, you look at Discovery, and I felt like when Discovery got it right, oh my God, it was untouchable.
Yeah.
But Strange New Worlds, they are continuously reinventing it and knocking it out of the park. The episode where Spock is fixed, I don't, this might be a spoiler for you, but in the second season, there's an advanced alien race that they rescue Spock in Nurse Chapel.
Right.
But they realize that Spock, he's kind of broken. He's half Vulcan, half human. So let's fix him, and they make him human. And watching I believe it's I think it's Ethan Peck, Gregory Peck's Gregory Peck's grandson, absolutely go completely in the other direction with Spock. It was comedy gold. And again, it feels like that writers have gotten better at writing prequels. I think that's what that was the kind of the point that I was getting at.
Okay.
Enterprise was suffering from that. Hey, let's write a prequel, but they hadn't really thought it out. They hadn't really looked at the canon and gone, okay, how can we do this differently? How can we do this differently, but still be Star Trek? And that's the genius, I think, of Strange New Worlds. It's still Star Trek, but it's also it's a completely different thing. And I give a lot of and I'm gonna say this, throwing it out there. AI can't write, and it will never be able to write the heart that Strange New Worlds has, that Discovery has, and even to some extent, flawed as it is, what Enterprise was.
Yeah.
These
Agreed.
are, I mean, and yeah, I just I think on a whole, writers have gotten better at writing prequels, and I think that's why we're seeing some of this stuff come out and have it be as good as it is.
Yeah.
Agree. 100% agree.
Woo!
Absolutely. Sheesh, man. Sheesh.
Sorry.
Well, we've been going for an hour and 50 minutes. I feel like probably 2 hours is probably a good place to call it. But before we call it, right, I think maybe we could answer one or two questions from our list here of stuff that we talked about earlier, right?
Sure.
Okay, favorite captain, go ahead.
All right. This is hard for me because it's a toss up between two. I think. All right. Okay. I'll get the runner up is Pike.
Oh.
Is because I think Pike would I love Anson Mount's performance as Christopher Pike. He is such a perfect captain for Strange New Worlds. When he popped up in Discovery, I was so hoping that they would do a spin-off with him, and I'm so glad they did because it became the best Star Trek that I've ever seen. But to me, it will always go back to Picard. Picard is my tried and true. That is absolutely. But like it was seeing Picard season 3 made me realize how good of a captain he really was.
Yep.
So that's my answer.
So the reason why it's breaking my heart, my favorite captain has got to be Anson Mount and Captain Christopher Pike. He stepped in and he made the role his own. and props to Jeffrey Hunter for being the first man to step into the role. But Anson Mount has taken this very original character of Roddenberry. He's very wooden, and he's turned him this beautiful three-dimensional individual who is flawed, who is optimistic, who is wide-eyed, who cooks. So I already feel like there's a connection there. I love how he gets people. He's like, the best way to get people around here is food, and he gets that, and I'm like, okay, we're simpatico. But knowing the path that he is on, knowing what is coming for Captain Christopher Pike breaks my heart, because I've grown because when I was very disconnected from Captain Christopher Pike when I saw him in the original series.
Right.
Now I'm getting to know him.
Right.
Now I'm getting to know him. Now
Well,
I'm
yeah,
going
because he
to
wasn't
love
supposed to exist. Like they
Right.
tweaked that from the original
Right.
pilot before Shatner
Right.
took over,
Right.
and they geniusly basically were like, hey, let's make it come an actual character.
Right. Now, this might be a pie in the sky kind of outlook. But we have, it was one of the things we were like, should we talk about this? And I'm like, that's a bit deep. Now, granted, I think your chat can handle it.
Yeah.
But we were going to talk about the differences between the Prime universe and the Kelvin universe.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, wait a second. On that note, what if there's a Pike universe? What if somebody decides, let's not have this fate befall Captain Christopher Pike, and suddenly we have the Pike timeline, where
Right.
somehow he avoids the fate that's coming at him like a freight train. Now, that may be me as a fanboy trying to make this work. But he's my favorite. He's my favorite. I'm actually now styling my hair. I'm trying to do the Pike's Peak, and with Steve's help, I've got the right product. Because look at Steve's hair. Steve's
yeah.
he's
very
had the Pike's Peak
swept.
for years. He's
Yeah.
swept, and I'm starting to get it. I didn't do it today, but I'm starting to get it. And I always know when I get it, because my wife looks at me and goes, and I'm like, okay, cool. And so that's my boy, Captain Christopher Pike, played by Anson Mount.
I love
Mr.
it.
Bohannon. Bohannon.
Mhm.
I love it. I love it. Okay, for me, all right. It's very, very, very difficult for me to pick between these two, because I always put myself in the situation of, if I was on the ship, whose leadership would I want to be under, and whose leadership would I thrive under, right?
Good call. Yeah.
So I feel like for
Interesting.
me, of course, Captain Picard is like structured. It's very like, it is the what is it? It's the ship, right? Like, you want to be on the Enterprise. It is the ship you want to be on, right? But I feel like in my heart, I just gotta say Janeway, because Janeway had to learn so much on the fly, was put in a really tough situation, multiple, like, oh my God, like, everyone's gonna die situations. How do I get out of it? And of course, the other captains have been in those kind of situations too, but she
Sure.
literally did not have the support of Starfleet. Like,
Yep.
literally had to
Yep.
MacGyver her way out of the Delta Quadrant.
Yep. And then she
and-
had to become not only a captain, but also like a mom or a parent to the entire ship. Like, this was going to be their home for a long time.
They
Yeah.
didn't know. Could have been 70 years. Who knows, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then that's the thing too. It's like, how do you keep motivation through things like Year of Hell? Like, how do you keep motivation
Year
through
of Hell. Oh my God.
Maquis versus like the people who are used to the structure of Starfleet, right? How do you figure all of that out? How do you deal with
Mhm.
Kes? How do you deal with Tuvix? You know what I'm
Mhm.
saying? How do you deal with that? And then Q coming over here trying to rile her
Yes.
up, you know?
Yeah.
So I just feel like I would want to be under, because she was a brand new captain. Like, she had not been in command for a very long time. And then to learn from that whole experience, like, bruh, you're going to be like, everybody's going to want you on their team after that. So that's
the
who
way,
I
you're
would
gonna-
want to be.
You're also you would absolutely love the first episode of Lower Decks this season because they do a version of Tuvix in this.
Oh,
It's
brother.
hilarious.
Just not
hilarious.
justice for Tuvix.
And they do it
Oh.
in the best way that Lower Decks can.
I can't wait. I can't wait. I can't wait. So yeah, that's who I would pick. That's who I would pick.
Although I
I'll
will
tell you something.
Frank in the chat, like Cisco punching Q. Like my favorite line from that episode is right after that. Q goes, "You hit me. Picard never hit me." And
Yeah.
Cisco's like, "I'm not
Picard. Yeah, I
Yup.
remember that.
Let's go. Let's
I-
go.
And I'll give you a favorite line of mine from Star Trek lore, and it was from the worst of the films. It was from one of the worst of the original series films. It was Star Trek V, The Final Frontier.
Here's Godney with a starship.
That is one of the best freaking lines because it's done in the most Shatner-esque way. He goes, God is talking, and Shatner goes, "Excuse me," and he takes a step forward and he goes, "Why does God need a starship?" And man, it is such a deep line when you think about it. Yeah. Wait a second. You're God. Why do you need a starship, baby?
Mhm,
And
mhm.
it's like, and it's a great line. It was the diamond in the rough that was Star Trek V.
Mhm,
Yeah.
mhm.
So good. So good.
Great times. Ash, thank you so much for suggesting this. My
Yeah.
face hurts. I am exhausted. I have ranted at the warp core. I'm an old man that needs to go to bed now and just say these young whippersnappers don't know a photon torpedo from a
bulkhead.
from a rear
Oh my
bulkhead.
God.
Wouldn't find 10 forward if a bell was tied on it.
Okay, chat, I need you all to do me a huge favor and please and go and follow these amazing creators here. The T Monster, Blind Gamer Steve, please make sure to go and follow them because clearly they know their Star Trek. Clearly. And they are amazing and wonderful and incredible people to go and hang out with. Please let everyone know where they can also find you on like social media and when's the next time you're gonna go live, all that kind of stuff.
T, why don't you go ahead?
Okay. Well, if you can't find me under the T Monster, you'll find me under Old Spirits Investigations on Instagram and on Threads as well. As far as any live investigations, we just finished an investigation of the old hospital on College Hill.
Oh wow.
And right now, and because of that investigation, we're now on Kitten Watch because something did attach itself to me. We call her Evie, short for EVP. And she is a beautiful, if you want to see the photographs, that's on my Discord as well. But yeah, you'll hear all about EVP and the kittens that she's carrying on all of these channels as well. But I believe our next investigation may be happening live from Lynchburg in early October. And I'm looking for that. I'm looking for that magic investigation that I can take Ash on because I know she'd love it. I know she'd dig it. It's gonna be hella fun, and I will stream the crap out of it. I promise you. And of course, check us out if you want to see what we've gotten up to in the world of the paranormal. Please feel free to go to YouTube and subscribe to Old Spirits Investigations. You can find it. It's me and a guy named Phil Rossi.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing.
And thank you for all and I'm seeing some of the follows. Thank you for the follows in advance. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I guess I'll say you can be able to follow me here on Twitch, Blind Gamer Steve. I basically mostly just do just chatting. I have like a kind of fun little like morning show sort of like vibe. Like grab a coffee, grab a tea, grab some water or whatever, and just kind of come hang out in the mornings while we just kind of get started with our day and just kind of chat about whatever. T and I, we've kind of done our own little like coffee chat, and we just kind of discuss all things. It was like much like we discussed Star Trek and what we've been watching or doing, stuff like that too. So he pops in there. Nash, we need to get you in there. I don't know, like, I don't know
yes, let's
how
do
early
it.
in the morning you are, but I would love to be able to like grab a cup of coffee with you on
Love
stream at some point. So
yeah.
You can also follow me on socials. I'm Steve Saylor pretty much everywhere. Twitter, YouTube, I still call it Twitter. I like Blue Sky, Threads, Instagram, or you can be able to follow me here, Blind Gamer Steve, here on Twitch. So, but Ash, I want to say huge thank you for making this happen and allowing us to be guests in your home, and I appreciate it so much. Like, again, it's just the past 2 hours was a highlight of my day because I get to talk about Star Trek with friends, and
this was ridiculously
my
fun.
favorite thing. So thank you very much.
Fun, Ash. Thank you.
Oh man, I don't know if you both are going to. Are you both going to TwitchCon?
We are both speaking.
All
we are both
right.
speaking.
Yes, we'll see each other there. Yes, let's freaking go.
Look. If we can't find a karaoke bar, there is a tiki bar that I think would be a great place to celebrate your birthday. It's called Frankie's Tiki Bar, and I need to go there, Steve. I need to go there because the week after TwitchCon, I'm turning 55, and I'm going to be doing a haunted luau at a tiki bar in a haunted house. I'm not joking. It's a tiki bar in a haunted house, and I want to make sure I bring back from Vegas at least 2 tiki mugs from Frank's Tiki Bar. So if you want to check out Frankie's Tiki Bar in Vegas, it's good fun. It is good fun. All right.
I will have to keep that in mind. Thank you so much to the two of you for coming on. Oh my God, it was such a fun time. I'm definitely going to upload this VOD to YouTube, and because if anybody missed it, you can catch it there, and it'll be up there permanently. Yeah, well, I'm just going to look for someone to raid. I have an idea of who I'm going to raid. But yeah, thank you so much. And thank you, chat, for being here. Y'all are the best. Y'all really came with your Star Trek knowledge. This was so fun. And yeah, we'll have to do this again. So thanks, everyone. And I'm going to raid Okadrian because Adrian is playing.
Oh, Okadrian, yeah.
Adrian's playing Castlevania 2 Simon's Quest.
Ooh,
so
there we go. But
we need to
before you do that, there's one thing I think we all gotta say. Like, I gotta say it to chat. I gotta say it to you, Ash. I gotta say it to you, T. Live long and prosper.
Live long and prosper. Absolutely. Happy Star Trek Day.
Happy Star Trek Day.
Thank you, everyone. And I will see you all later. Bye-bye. Hello? Uh-oh. There we go. Okay. Let's make sure this is off.